Hi, I'm Dave Olson, and welcome to the debate between the candidates for the 12th Essex State Representative Seat. This debate is sponsored by the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce, the Salem News, and Peabody Access Television. Our Republican nominee is Stephanie Peach. Democratic nominee is Thomas Walsh, and thank you both for coming tonight. Our panelists this evening are Christopher Pecci of North Shore Bank, Chairman of the Peabody Chamber of Commerce, Christina Pescatori, Senior at Peabody High School, and Deanne Healy, the Executive Director of the Peabody Chamber of Commerce. And how things are going to work tonight, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question from the panel. Then they'll each have 30 seconds for a rebuttal before we move on to the next question. And after the last question, each candidate will get a chance for a 2-minute closing statement. So we're going to get right to the questions, and the first question comes from Chris.
Thank you, David.
And it goes to Stephanie.
Good evening, candidates. The Legislature's Education Committee is holding a hearing this week on a proposal to repeal the adoption of the so-called Common Core curriculum. There may also be a citizen's petition on the November ballot. What is your position on the Common Core, and would you vote to keep it or repeal it, and why?
I think that's a great question that's very important to the voters here in Peabody. I am opposed to Common Core. I think that we have standards here in Massachusetts that were much higher than the federal standards that are being handed down to us. I think our students suffer and our teachers suffer when they're held to such a strict curriculum that isn't really going to show us the results that we need to be seeing from our students. I started my college education actually to become a high school teacher and to teach history actually. And when I got into the classroom, I saw the mandates that you have to follow, both state and federal mandates to be a teacher. And I said, you're not teaching here. You're following mandates and you're teaching to a test. And you're making sure that each day that we're achieving these standards that are set by our government. As a legislator, you're not an educator. Some of our legislators have an educational background, but as a whole, we shouldn't be mandating things for our schools. I am completely opposed to that. I've worked actually on the ballot initiative to collect signatures to make sure that we as voters and as citizens have a say in what our students are learning. I think it's very important. And I will be voting for that initiative to repeal Common Core in the fall if our legislature does not take action prior to that.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Tom.
I think I get 30 seconds, right?
You get 2 minutes, and then you get another 30 seconds.
all right.
Okay.
So, bonus time, that's right.
Okay. I'm also opposed to Common Core. It seems to me to be a one-size-fits-all kind of program that doesn't suit the students in Massachusetts, particularly in Peabody, where I'm most concerned. There are some items in the program that just, it seems to me, will leave some people behind. And the initiatives that we have adopted over the last several years have been effective. Massachusetts has a very good reputation for its education programs. I know we can always do better. There's always room for improvement, but Common Core does not suit Massachusetts well, and I will oppose it.
Thank you.
You have 30 seconds if you want to add anything.
Nothing to add.
Thank you.
Nick, are you all set?
All set. Thank you.
Does the region and Peabody need to increase the reliability and lower the cost of its natural gas supply? What role does the Kinder Morgan pipeline proposal play in this process, and how would you balance the needs of neighborhood anatomy with the need for steady, reliable energy?
There are a couple bills pending in the legislature that have to do with energy. A really comprehensive bill that includes hydropower and alternative energy sources. But specifically, the Kinder Morgan proposal, as it affects Peabody, is something that I have opposed on the City Council and will continue to oppose as a state representative if I'm fortunate enough to be elected. The part that really bothers me is that the pipeline, as proposed, will come through the city of Peabody, but there are no end users in Peabody, for one thing. The other part of that is we're disrupting a neighborhood. The people on Glen Drive and the surrounding neighborhood have invested their life savings in their homes, and once again are being threatened with the possibility of significant disruption. Kinder Morgan has, as I understand it, petitioned the Department of Public Utilities for rights to go on the neighbors' properties to do their surveying and the things that they need to do, all with no benefit to the city of Peabody or its residents. The issue of energy itself, there's a prediction that within several years we will have about a 25% reduction in the resources, sources of energy that we have today, given that the Yankee power plant has closed and Pilgrim is also offline. So we have to look at alternatives, and that includes wind power, solar, all your renewable energy sources. And that's the avenue we should be pursuing, not sending a pipeline through a neighborhood and through a community with all disruption and no benefit.
So I've actually been up at the State House for over 2 years, and when this proposal came through Kinder Morgan, and we discovered that they planned to go through the city of Peabody, I got right on that. Leah Cole, the previous state rep, was opposed to this. She was one of the first legislators to come out and oppose this publicly for the city of Peabody, and we worked very hard to determine what are the avenues we have to go through, what laws can protect our citizens here in Massachusetts. And we started working with other legislators that will be affected by the same pipeline, and also other legislators in the region who would support Peabody and the citizens here to make sure that when the time comes for Article 97 vote in the legislature, that we have the votes to oppose this. Article 97 is about taking protected land and using it for a public use, and this includes protected land being along the Ipswich River. We need to make sure that that doesn't go through. Other legislators in the state have said that they want to approve it because we need the resources. There's no doubt we need more energy in our Commonwealth, but there's no guarantee that this energy is, one, the right energy that we need in the Commonwealth, and two, going to benefit the people of the Commonwealth or the North Shore in any way. So we need to make sure that we have someone in the State House who knows the process already and is ready to walk in and work with the people on Beacon Hill to make sure this doesn't happen.
30 seconds, if you want anything, Tom?
No, I think that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Set. Deanne?
Okay. Last month, Massachusetts House lawmakers approved a bill aimed at addressing the state's alarming spike in opioid overdoses and deaths by limiting painkiller prescriptions to a 7-day supply, while rejecting a proposal that would have allowed doctors to involuntarily commit those suffering from overdoses to drug treatment facilities for up to 3 days. Would you have voted for giving doctors the ability to commit patients involuntarily to drug treatment facilities for 72 hours if they were considered an immediate danger to themselves or others? And what else do you think can be done to address the opioid crisis?
I think the bill that the legislature passed is a great first step towards solving the problem that we have in the Commonwealth. That bill was filed while I was still working in the State House. I worked with other reps who put their names on that bill, who contributed to that bill. It was a lot different what ended up being voted on, as many bills end up being. I would have voted in favor of allowing doctors, that was in the original bill. It was stripped before it came to the floor, and it was proposed as an amendment. I would certainly support that. I think we're at a time where with the Narcan, it's wonderful, it saves lives, but the way I was trained, I got Narcan training at the State House actually, and what happens is that it brings you back to life, but it doesn't eliminate the opioid from your system. And so you don't have the feeling of a high anymore. And what's happening to so many young people are they're being discharged from the emergency room because they can sign themselves out. They don't have the feeling of a high, and they go and they use again and they overdose, and there's no way to bring them back. That is upsetting to the families. I can't imagine being a mother to lose their child when a doctor could have just said, you have to stay here. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for our community for you to be out on the streets at this time. I think a lot of people, that's a vital time in an addict's recovery, is that 24-hour to 72-hour detox. And there's really no way to make someone do that. And I think we missed an opportunity in the legislature to help young people who aren't really willing to help themselves at that time and moment because they're chasing a high. But once we can get them clean and detoxed, what we then need to do is get them into a bed, get them into a program to make sure that they're off our streets and they're getting the help that they need.
Tom?
Thank you.
Yep.
I would not support the involuntary committal. I think there's some issues on civil liberties. I understand that that this is an addiction and that these individuals have problems that are very serious. But I think that that suggestion is fraught with danger and brings a whole set of other issues that I think we would bring on more problems. The opioid crisis is something that is affecting every demographic in Peabody, in Massachusetts, and across the country. And it's frightening. The ways to address it, I think the steps that the House took, the governor's suggestions are all good, and I think that once you get to conference committee, we'll have a comprehensive bill that I think everybody will be satisfied with, and will take significant steps at fighting this problem. Really, I think it was the governor who said, or someone in the administration, that we have to be disruptive, and that we have to cause a lot of different, create a lot of different actions to stop the crisis from growing. We haven't even reached the peak yet, unfortunately, and that's frightening. You know, as a funeral director, I've seen the end result, and the horror that families witness and have to live with is just something that we shouldn't have to deal with. So there are a lot of things that we can do. As Stephanie said, the increasing of available beds is one option, or one fragment of this. Working with our law enforcement officials, District Attorney, Representative Tucker in Salem was instrumental last year in pushing for the fentanyl to be prohibited. Issues like that are what we really need to be focusing on, and a little less on this mandatory admission into a hospital. Because you know what, 3
That's
days.
your time?
Yep. Okay.
You get 30 seconds in a little bit.
Thank you.
Do you have 30 seconds, Stephanie?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, I'm fully aware and very conscientious of the civil liberties that will come into question with an involuntary admittance. It's not unheard of. There's precedents for it with other issues that when people pose a public safety risk. And I think that we can agree that someone who is high but can't feel that high, you know, if they don't have the resources to pay for the illegal drugs that they're seeking, they may, you know, commit a crime in order to get that. That is a public safety issue. That's something that we need to address. I think there's times where so many things could have been prevented had we had the ability to admit someone into a program immediately, right, into detox. It comes to a point you have to weigh, is this person's not freedom, but are they even in a position to make a judgment call at that time to say whether or not they have the ability to re-enter our society while they're using illicit drugs? It's a public safety issue. It's a sad issue. I have people I went to high school with who have fallen down the path of addiction. I graduated in 2009. These are people who weren't using these drugs 6 years ago. It's awful. It's devastating, and we need to make some drastic moves in this country, in this Commonwealth, and in this city to, one, prevent children from going down this path. I think it's great we're limiting the number of prescription pills that you can receive on a first-time prescription. You know, I remember I had knee surgery when I was in high school, and I had 40 pain pills prescribed to me, and I didn't use a quarter of them. What happens to those drugs if you don't know what to do with it? So I think we need to, one, focus on prevention, but also at the same time have the programs in place to help the people who have already fallen to addiction.
Thank you. And we'll give you 2 minutes. We went 2 minutes for Stephanie, so you can have 2 minutes if you want.
I just want to say on the 3-day admission that if you have followed at all Sheriff Cousins' program at the Essex County House of Correction in the new wing that is servicing some of the inmates with counseling and other programs, one of the comments was that incarcerating somebody or holding them against their will to come clean is referred to as spin dry. It doesn't solve their problem if there's not counseling and other programs. So I just think that 3-day admission is not very helpful, and it doesn't really solve the problem. It doesn't address the problem at all.
Thank you. Chris, next question, and it's for Tom.
There's a bill before the legislature that would guarantee paid family leave, a measure that concerns some businesses. Do you support paid family leave?
In theory, yes. I don't know all the particulars of the bill, but I do think that paid family leave is helpful. You look at a lot of families who have children who are ill, and have to take time off or give up their job if they don't have other family who can help them. We have, we've seen people who have maternity leave, and the 8 weeks just is not enough, and they need more time to get settled and to make sure their child is cared for. So, yes.
I haven't actually seen the bill and the language of the bill as proposed, but I would support paid family leave if it was operated as a program that your employees pay into, much like short-term disability. I think that having that opportunity to choose as an employee to pay into a program that maybe one day down the road you'll utilize if you decide to have a family, or you have a family, you would obviously pay into it. I think that's important. We shouldn't be putting this burden solely on our business owners. I don't think that's right. I think we need to have a system that our employees could pay into, and something like that, if it was drafted in a comprehensive manner, I would support.
Thank you.
Anything to add, Tom?
No.
All set. Okay, our next question is from Christina.
Women working full-time in Massachusetts earn 82 cents for every dollar a man earns, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The disparity is slightly less than the national average, estimated at 79 cents to the dollar. A bill before the state legislature aims to address that gap, in part by making it easier to sue for discrimination. Do you support this proposal? What, if any, should the legislature be doing to close this wage gap?
The Senate actually just passed that bill, and I believe it moves on to the House now. That's certainly something as a female I support. I don't think anyone should be paid less so long as they have the same work skills, same educational credentials. As a woman, I've never been in a position where I've made less than my male colleagues. And being a state employee, it's a little bit easier to know what your male colleagues make, as it's public record. But I think it's important that we work towards full equality in the workforce. I think we've come such a long way in such a short amount of time. But as we move forward, I think there are avenues for female employees to sue for discrimination in that way, and I think there shouldn't be barriers for people who are truly being discriminated against.
It amazes me that this is still an issue. You know, I can remember being in high school, and the buttons were 72 cents or 76 cents, and the fact that we are still debating this is mind-boggling to me. One of the pieces of the bill that I think is fantastic is that when a job is advertised, the base salary is advertised. So it can't be, you know what the job's going to pay. And I think that's incredibly important, and it's fair. Because if you apply for a job and one of your classmates applies for the same job and he happens to be male, there is no reason that you should earn anything less than he does.
Stephanie, anything to add?
No.
Set. Deanne?
Easy group. Change course a little bit. After the city reconfigures the square this year, in your opinion, what should be the next big project the city tackles?
Was that me or?
And it goes to you, Tom.
Okay. Where do you want to start? The traffic part is just one piece of it. Seeking every dollar we can from state funding, private investment, to encourage the property owners along the Main Street corridor to redevelop their properties, hopefully provide some more housing units, would be very important. I think the city is off to a good start, but we still have some areas that need to be redeveloped and encourage more business to come in. When we move from downtown, I mean, we have the Bandar property, which we really need to encourage more movement on, and then decide what will happen with the Foster Street parking lot, whether we're moving forward with anything there or not. Downtown also has a flooding issue, and it's something that as a state legislator we have to be very active at seeking out funds to try to assist the city, whether it be downtown or looking at retention ponds anywhere else across the city of Peabody. So those are things that would help downtown. But encouraging more housing on those. I look downtown and I see the commercial, the first floors seem to be, for the most part, occupied. But there are many units on the second and third floors that are not. And if we could have those apartments rehabbed, ready to go. You would attract young professionals. If you get young professionals, and maybe some seniors too who don't want a house anymore. But the more housing we get, the more foot traffic we get. The more foot traffic we have in Peabody Square, the more people who are going to patronize all those different storefronts. Then we'll need more coffee shops, we'll need more cleaners, we'll need all the things that make a downtown vibrant. Hopefully a few more restaurants would then open up. And one thing that I always say about downtown is I would love to see more lights on the second and third floors when you go by at night.
Time? Stephanie, 2 minutes?
So once we finish the traffic pattern downtown, there's so much more to do downtown and throughout the rest of the city. I think we're on the right path downtown, and while I was in the State House, it's not a secret that Peabody floods. It's not a secret. We make the news every time we get a good rainstorm. In high school, I think I had more rain days than snow days. So I understand living downtown in Ward 3. I understand the struggles of that. I have to go down Walnut Street to get to my house, which sometimes I have to go through Salem when there's a flood. So I understand, and that was something that we focused on in Representative Cole's office. We were able to secure $100,000 for a flood mitigation study downtown for the city of Peabody, which was just released by DCR last week. So we'll be receiving those funds here in Peabody, and I'm proud to have worked on that. And I would continue to do that if elected. I think it's very important. You can't attract a business downtown if they're worried that, one, their business will flood, or two, that they're going to lose business for 3 or 4 days when traffic's closed for their street. At the same time, we need to be looking at housing downtown. I think we need more affordable housing with a lowercase a. A lot of my friends from high school don't live in Peabody anymore because our rents are much higher than our surrounding cities. I chose to buy a house in Peabody a few years ago because it was half the cost of renting a 2-bedroom apartment. That was something I was fortunate enough to do. We need to do those things, and it's kind of a, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we need to bring the young professionals downtown to attract the right types of businesses, or do we need to open the businesses to get the people to live downtown? I don't know the answer. I think you have to do it simultaneously. And I would also like to see us at the same time start working on Walnut Street and developing those business properties there so that we could be more of a walkable downtown, not just a single street downtown, but a walkable downtown where we can enjoy the parks that we have that we've revitalized in the city, and also have more businesses to utilize.
30 seconds to add, Tom?
Thanks. Yeah, just as, if I'm fortunate enough to be your representative, as a legislator, I'll be working with the mayor's office, Senator Lovely's office, and the entire delegation to move forward programs that we want for downtown Peabody. But I'll be advocating what the administration wants for downtown and working off a master plan so that the goals of the city and the goals of I, as your state representative, are the same. We have to work together or we'll accomplish nothing.
30 seconds, Alexis?
Yeah, I would agree that that's very important, which is why I, through my time working for Representative Cole, I kept a very open relationship with the mayor and his chief of staff, and made sure we touched base on a regular basis to make sure that what the efforts we were putting in at the state were the efforts that the city wanted to see. So we actually filed that flood mitigation money in last year's budget on behalf of the mayor of Peabody. So that's something I would continue to do. And working with Senator Lovely, we have a great relationship, and I have a great relationship with her staff, so I think we'd be able to get a lot done for the city.
Thank you. Chris?
Just to expand a little bit on Deanne's question and your answers to that question, where do you see Peabody in about 5 to 10 years down the road, and in particular addressing Centennial Park and downtown?
Stephanie?
I certainly think we need to address both the downtown and Centennial Drive. I actually grew up on Linfield Street on the opposite side of Centennial Drive, and I remember when they developed those buildings over there and it first started to boom. And with the change in our economy, we saw some businesses leave, but we've seen some great work on the city level to rezone those areas to make much wider use of the space, and I think that's great. I'd like to see Peabody much like our neighbor Salem in 5 to 10 years. I think it's possible. I think we just need to get the right people at the table to help us design our city. We need to work hard. We need to apply for every grant. We can't leave money on the table here in Peabody. We need to make sure that we have someone strong at the state advocating for those grant monies when the city does apply. We need to make sure that someone at the state is keeping an eye for when grants are available. That's what I did for the last 2 years. When I saw a grant come up at the state level, I made sure that the mayor's office knew about it. I made sure that our community developers knew that it was available. And as a state representative, that's all you can do. You can't write the grant for the city. You can just put it on their desk. I think it's important that we move forward in our business and our housing development. We need to attract young professionals to our city, at the same time work with our transportation system to see if we can get, at least a bus line that goes to Salem Station. That blew my mind when I found that out. We have a great opportunity where we are in Peabody. It's a great city. I grew up here, and I would love to raise my own family here. We have a great opportunity to better our education system, better our business economy, and we can really make our housing market here in Peabody one of the best on the North Shore. And I think if we continue the path that we're going and we have the right people at the table, we'll be able to do that in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great, thank you.
I see Peabody booming in 5 years. With the initiatives that have already begun in Peabody Square, with the efforts at Centennial Park, I think we're well situated geographically. You have routes 95, 93, 128, Route 1, which allows us easy access both to our northern states, our northern neighbors, and you can hop on the pike with not too much effort, relatively. But you look at what's happening in Boston right now, and with the influx of GE residents coming in, not all of them will live in Boston. I'm hoping some of them will choose Peabody. It's a fairly short commute overall. And I also see the values of property in Boston rising. There was an article a couple weeks ago, they were looking at, the next couple of years, values rising 20% or better, which means that some people are going to choose something that may be just a little bit less expensive. And who better than Peabody? We are well situated. We have a lot to offer. It will be, again, as our downtown is rehabilitated, we will have units that young professionals might be interested in. I also think we have a rail spur that we are not taking advantage of and that we must figure out a way. I have had discussions with the mayor and Senator Lovely and a group of people about running some type of trolley on that track that goes between Dunkin' Donuts and Century Bank, and it goes right over to the Salem Depot. And it would be a great way to allow some of our commuters who go to Boston to get over there a little bit quicker. And also, it's an opportunity when people come from either Logan Airport or the city of Boston to come visit the Salem area, they could hop on this little trolley and come into Peabody Square and take advantage of what we have here. There is no mall in Salem. Perhaps we could do something that could attract them to the North Shore Mall and increase business there as well. So I think we have a lot of opportunities, and we just have to figure out the best way to take advantage of them.
Stephanie, you have...
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking to the rail spur that we do have in Peabody, I hear the cargo train go through about once a week, sometimes at very strange hours of the day. But I think it's very important, and actually we got a group together, the mayor of Salem, the mayor of Peabody, we had Senator Lovely, people from the MBTA, and we sat down at a table and we talked about what are our options, how much would it cost, what's the plan, and how can we get that done for the commuters of Peabody, because it is an issue. And I know a lot of people take the bus actually to the Lynn train station because it's the only bus route there. So we've been working on that. Unfortunately, this discussion came at a time where the MBTA completely just fell apart last winter. So I think it's definitely in the works, and I'd like to see it happen.
Tom?
No, that's
All set?
good. Thank you, Dan.
All right. Next question.
Essex Tech was in the news recently when the district school committee approved a no-bid deal for a private developer to build a sports complex on taxpayer-held property. The deal was pushed through with the help of special legislation championed by local lawmakers. Would you have supported this deal, and are you happy with how the district, which Peabody pays hundreds of thousands of dollars, is being run?
I am not happy with the decision to have a no-bid contract. I don't see any benefit to the city of Peabody, and the rink was away from the academic area. And it didn't seem to me to be the best decision. To me, it should have gone out to bid if this is what the school wanted. We pay $3 million a year for the school. The school itself, I think, is providing wonderful opportunities for our students in Peabody who are lucky enough to attend. And, you know, I said I was having coffee with a group of people, and I said, you know, we all need people who can fix things, because I cannot. And I would rather educate our students locally so that they stay here and that they work here. So the Essex Tech is a great addition to the region. To would I have voted for that legislation? I would not have. Of course, that's much easier to say as you know, being an armchair quarterback, but the whole thing should not have happened, in my opinion. And if it did go out to bid, if they decided that the skating rink was really important to that school, I am sure that there would be other contractors who would have bid on that program.
I think the way that all of that happened was a disgrace, and it shed a very negative light on our legislature. And I think that's what happens when you have people who have run unopposed for years, who are in the House, who are in power for so many years. And I think that's why people are fed up. And this is just one thing that's happened in our state government, and it just happens to be locally for us in Peabody. Speaking on to how we run that school system as a whole, I think it's a great opportunity for our students here in Peabody, but I also think it's taking away from our students at Peabody High. And I think we need to find a way to strike a balance. We pay thousands more dollars per student that goes to that beautiful, state-of-the-art, arguably better than most colleges, Essex Tech, than we do for our students that attend our public school here that, you know, they couldn't get in because they didn't have the grades or there weren't enough slots for them. And that's what troubles me about the technical schools, is that there used to be for a population of students who weren't planning to go to college, who may not graduate traditional high school, and we're losing a location for those students now because our technical schools have become so high class, because our technical industry has become, they call it, you know, white glove, what's the word? You know, it's clean. It's clean mechanical work, and I think that a lot of those people, a lot of the students I talked to when I was fortunate enough to tour the school, are still planning to go to college, and they're going to be worlds ahead of the students that they attend college with, which I think is wonderful. I think we need to work as a school system to determine how do we give those same opportunities to every single student here in Peabody. How do we provide that world-class education at our Peabody High School, and how do we make sure that we're not spending more money or allowing students at this other school to receive more opportunities solely because they were chosen to go to this school.
Tom, you have anything?
Just very quickly, two things is I wish the school committee would be complete when they have their meetings. It means the entire 20-member board meet, I think, would be helpful. And I just would remind Stephanie that the sponsors of that legislation were bipartisan. It was both Republicans and Democrats locally who sponsored that. Some opposed, some not opposed. But
Stephanie, you want 30 seconds?
Yeah, just going back to the way we run the district for the technical school, there are some things. I've looked at the budget that's come out, and the amount of money I believe has gone up this year that the city of Peabody will be contributing, which as a homeowner will, you know, my property taxes have gone up already significantly due to this new school. I think, as I said, it's a wonderful opportunity, but we need to look at how do we provide a world-class education while we keep our taxes low here in Peabody, and also make sure all of our students get the same educational opportunities.
Thank you. Deanne.
All right. So no secret, businesses do not vote. As the largest organization in Peabody representing the interests of the business community, how do you see working with the Peabody Area Chamber of Commerce? And if elected, how can the Chamber best support you?
This is me, right?
Yep.
Well, Deanne, we've spent many, many days together over the last 2 years. I think it's vitally important that the state representative have a good relationship with the businesses in town, and I think the greatest way to do that is through the chamber, because it's very difficult to get a hold of each business owner. It's very difficult to have the time to go around and meet every single business owner. But I think through the chamber, you do a wonderful job there, getting our businesses together and getting the businesses' voices heard. So whenever legislation came up in the past while I was working at the State House that concerned our business community, you either reached out to me first or I reached out to you to make sure that we made sure the business concerns were heard on Beacon Hill and that we were, strongly representing you. As a state representative, you're voted in by your constituents, but I think a lot of constituents own the businesses here in Peabody, and they also have a concern as to whether the businesses succeed here in Peabody. So as a legislator, just moving forward with some business initiatives, I think the governor's doing a great job with reviewing all of our regulations that have been put in place, and I think we should certainly review any new regulations that would impact our small businesses. Anytime a regulation is imposed and there is no way that this new regulation would help grow business, that's a burden on business, and it's a cost, and there's no benefit. So we've seen it, from the federal government, we've seen it from the state government, and I think we need to take a step back, listen to our small business owners and our large business owners, and understand that their needs are different a lot of the time, and that a lot of the time we may have to, separate people out in legislation that we propose to make sure that it's doing good for our community, but it's not harming our businesses.
Tom?
Thank you. There's an old quote, it's a favorite quote of mine, that John D. Rockefeller said, that the success of one is dependent upon the success of the other. And I think that is so true with government and business, that we have to work together for the common good, or we won't be successful. Because if you as business owners are not successful, then we cannot attract people to the community, which means they're not buying houses, which means we can't educate our children to the level we want to. So we're in this together. I will say that I have been proud over the last several years to have participated in a couple of the committees on the Chamber of Commerce. Last year, I think probably one of the most challenging meetings I ever had was when I was elected council president, and we had a government affairs meeting. And it was a great, I'll tell you, it was one of my favorite afternoons, but it was challenging in that a lot of questions were thrown at me. I think we got a good dialogue going about many of the concerns that the business owners had, particularly when it came to downtown and the direction that we had, and again on the flooding issue, which is ongoing. So I think that the partnership that I have already begun with the Chamber is positive, and as your legislator, we would further enhance that and work together to make sure that Peabody thrives.
Stephanie, do you have anything you want to add? That's it. And the last question of the night comes from Chris.
If elected, what is the one thing that you would work tirelessly on to bring resources to Peabody?
Is that me?
Yep.
Okay. Local aid is always a battle. Some years, depending on the economy itself, it's a challenge, but we have to fight for as much local aid as we can get. Any grants, as we discussed earlier, any grants that are available, we need to be at the table. Right now, we don't have a state representative on Beacon Hill, and we haven't since September 29th, which means there has been a gap in Peabody's exclusive representative advocating for what we need. We don't have that today. So on day one, should I be elected, I will be introducing myself to every secretary under the governor's administration to let them know that we're here, that we want what is, in my opinion, our fair share of the budget, and that we make sure that we're at the table. They know it, we know it, and we can work in partnership to grow Peabody in a positive way.
Local aid's done on a formula, and there's a budget review that did come out last year that I worked closely with other legislators and their staffs on how we implement that new plan. It's going to cost a lot of money, but it makes a lot of sense. And that separates out our educational funding, our special educational funding, our general aid for our cities and towns. And I think that's very important that we move towards that over the next few years, that new formula. But aside from local aid, which the governor has increased in his proposal, which I think is wonderful, we need to be fighting for, open money in the budget, much like we did last year for the flood mitigation study, much like we did in other bonds that we did. We got $400,000 for Crystal Lake in 2014, and that money has come to the city, and we're moving forward with that project. I think it's important to have relationships with the people on Beacon Hill and in the administration, and I have those relationships because I've been on Beacon Hill. I have the relationships with the staffers, and that's what's important. As staffers, we always would joke, we do everything but press the button, and it's really true in most offices. You do the legwork, you do the research, and you build those relationships throughout the executive branch and throughout the legislature. I had great relationships with the people who worked under Deval Patrick. I built those relationships with the people who work for Governor Baker. And I'm ready to go back to Beacon Hill and on day one, say hi to my old colleagues and get to work for Peabody, because we're moving into budget once this election is over. We need to be able to analyze the budget, figure out what Peabody needs and where it fits within that budget. And you need someone who understands the process, who knows the people that are working within the process, and knows their staff to make sure that those amendments see the right eyes. So that's what I offer in this race: my experience, my education, and I would work tirelessly to make sure that Peabody gets their fair share in each budget cycle and each bond bill.
Thank you.
Anything to add, Tom?
Just that I have pushed that button before, and sometimes it's fun to push buttons, but no, just I would suggest that, and I don't mean to take anything away from Stephanie, she's a talented person, but I would suggest to you that if you take my entire experience, the fact that I have served in the legislature 20 years ago or so, served on the school committee, served on the city council, have been involved civically throughout the city of Peabody. I think if you combine that whole skill set, I bring something unique to the table and could use it effectively for Peabody.
30 seconds if you want to, Stephanie.
Yeah, I think my experience in the legislature is much more recent. I think, I know the players and the key players up on Beacon Hill. I have a great relationship with leadership on both sides of the aisle, and I have a great relationship with our governor. I think we're ready to start working. Peabody is important to everyone in the state. It's important to the governor who neighbors us, who likes to see Peabody thrive because it will improve his own local economy. I think we are ready to work hard and to move forward and do what's best for the people of Peabody, no matter what.
Thank you.
And now each candidate gets a chance for a 2-minute closing. And we start by virtue of coin toss. Stephanie gets to go first, and you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. So I would just like to thank everyone who came out and voted on February 2nd, and I encourage you all to show up on March 1st. This is such an important election. We need someone on Beacon Hill representing Peabody who can start day one and get things done. I am ready. I have those relationships. I know the people up on Beacon Hill, and I'm ready to work hard for you just as I have for the last 2 years. I'm a proud graduate of Peabody High. I graduated Westfield State University, and I just recently received my master's degree from UMass Boston in public administration. I have the education, the experience, and the energy to be your state representative. I've been doing this, and I'm ready to work for you. My husband and I own a house here in Peabody. I'm invested in this community. I grew up here. My niece and nephew, Nick and Kira, they go to our public school systems here. I have a vested interest in what happens and how well we succeed here in Peabody. We are sick and tired as taxpayers of the tax and spend policies on Beacon Hill, and I'm ready to go up there and fight for every dollar that you work hard for that we're going to contribute to our economy. We need to see a return on our investment, and if you'd like to see more return on your investment, I'm your next state representative. Thank you.
Tom.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to you, Dave, and the Salem News, the Chamber of Commerce, and PAT for hosting us this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity to allow the voters one more time to hear from us. Very appreciative of that. The reason I'm running for state representative is we, for the last several years, have been somewhat at a disadvantage. When Fred Berry retired and then Joyce passed away, we had a gap where we had no one representing us, and we have had a representative that served a piece of 2 terms. And we find ourselves again with nobody at Beacon Hill advocating on behalf of the residents of Peabody. And I need to fill that gap. I think that nobody is better prepared than I. As I stated a few minutes ago, if you take my skill set, lack of a better term, my experience on the school committee, city council, the other civic organizations that I've been involved in, I have been involved in the city since I've been in college, I guess, in one capacity or another, and believe that I can step in there on the first day. I know the building, I know the process, and I too have some pretty significant relationships with people who I served with years ago, people I have met along the way, and I think I can advocate very well for Peabody. I also have a great relationship with many of our local leaders. Work closely with Mayor Betancourt and Senator Lovely. I think as a team, we could produce some good things for the residents of Peabody. My colleagues on the city council have been very encouraging, and I think that for the short term anyway, who better to bring the issues of the city to the State House than somebody who's sitting in the council chamber and can deliver that right to the House chamber. It's important that we have somebody who is experienced. We don't need somebody with a learning curve, no matter what it is, pressing the button or anything else. We need someone who can go in day one and start producing. I believe that is I. I'm also honored to have the support of both my...
About done. You're 2 minutes.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry.
Boy, do I talk long.
I know.
Okay. Just thank you. And just to the residents of Peabody, I would sincerely appreciate your vote, because that's the most important thing on March 1st. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and thank you both. And that concludes our debate tonight. I want to thank the staff of PAT. This has been an excellent debate. This is a great studio. I want to remind people that, again, March 1st, get out and vote. It's also primary day, so there's no excuse for forgetting. Thank you to our panel, and once again, thank you to our candidates.
Thank you.
There are a lot of places where you don't see a contested race, especially in a special election, and Peabody's lucky to have had a really good primary, and now they have a really good final election. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.